This hope does not disappoint.
Welcome back to the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Baines. This is part 2 of my conversation with Army chaplain and Christian fiction author Matthew Runals. And if you joined us for part 1, you already know this isn't just an interview about books. We started with faith, how it's lived, tested, disciplined, and carried into everyday life. Only then did we begin talking about fiction, because Christian fiction doesn't exist in a vacuum. It flows out of a lived Christian walk. In this second part, we go deeper into community, compassion, responsibility, and why stories matter, especially for boys, men, and families who are looking for truth without sermons and courage without caricatures. If you missed part 1, I encourage you to go back and listen first. And if you're ready to continue, let's step back into the conversation.
As again, books can shape human hearts more than we realize. And I'll never forget this account, and I can't remember where I read it. But, there's this little girl who wrote to C.S. Lewis, just loving Aslan and just being, fascinated with him. And one of the last lines that, she inscribes is, if only there was an Aslan that was real. And then, of course, C.S. Lewis wrote back to her, with encouraging words and saying that there is.
Good news.
There is this good news, and it's a very humbling thing to do what we do. But the point is that we should do it, and we should be as wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove, as we're writing these fictionary tales of fantasy, but truth as well.
Yeah. The sage advice to writers is show us, don't tell us. So incorporate those biblical truths in your characters and your situations. Don't just tell us about it. And I think Jesus' point in his parables was you can argue with someone about a point, or you can describe it in a fictional event or relationship that allows them to look at something without feeling like they have to agree with someone.
To your point, Mike, there's this old saying, and who knows who actually said it, but, I always believe in preaching the gospel. Sometimes I use words. It's, it's just this harsh reality that we can argue with somebody, and I think discussions are, crucial to Christians being part of society, but we can also share them in stories. And again, these stories can be so critical. They can shape culture. And again, I always kind of point back to C.S. Lewis because I think he's a great example. A lot of people know him for Screwtape Letters and the Chronicles of Narnia, but the guy was a pastor. I mean, the guy wrote many sermons. He wrote letters to local newspapers and so forth. He was part of society. He was part of the culture and community.
Yeah.
And, what my life verse is from Jeremiah 29, starting in verse 4. Everybody loves Jeremiah 29:11. For, thus says the Lord, I know the plans I have I know the plans I have in store for you. But if you take it to the left, what does God tell Jeremiah to share with the people? It's, listen, I want you to build houses, grow crops, marry off your kids, grow in number, don't decrease. I'm not going to forget about you, but, and here's the kicker, pray and seek the community that I've placed you in. Pray and seek for the city. Because as they prosper, so shall you. And I think that is something that we've forgotten in the modern day church that we need to be praying and seeking out the cities and the towns that God has placed us in, whether you're somebody like me, who it could be for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and then you're off again, or somebody that's been living in their house for decades, that we should be praying and seeking. And one way of doing that is certainly by getting to know our neighbors. But the other way of doing that is to investing in our community through storytelling. Because in the end, I truly want the younger generation to know that they can be part of this world that can seem so daunting, can seem so overwhelming, and to provide them with characters that they can say, hey, this guy did it, and so can I. It was a very powerful moment for my family because, again, we typically live on the installation, on the military quarters that they provide families. But here in Newport News, we live in the city. And we were very prayerful and mindful of, this is different, because normally when you're on post, it's very safe, it's very secure. You let your kids out, they play just like it's, the 1920s type of deal. It's just really, really unique. Well, here we live in the city. And so we were very prayerful, and it was a cul-de-sac, and we decided, listen, we don't know our neighbors. Okay. So let's just have a block party outside, and we're just going to make it potluck, and we're going to tell everybody, look, we're going to provide hot dogs and ribs. And maybe they came for the ribs, but we had 40 people show up. And none of us really knew each other. And we just got to know each other. And one of the ladies shared with me that they had been living in the same house, Mike, for 25 years and didn't know their neighbors. And I was thinking, how is that possible? Here, my family, we move so frequently, and yet we know our neighbors. We know these people. And this person has been living in the same house for over 20 years and doesn't know anybody. The point being, though, is we know our neighbors now. The very next weekend, we had a very impromptu block party, but people came out. And so, we invite each other over. And so we have to make a choice to be involved in the world, the playground that God has given to us. It's a choice. Yeah. And part of that is learning to be vulnerable again, because the greatest sense of confidence comes from honesty. No athlete builds confidence of their sport by not being honest about their skill. They don't. They have to be honest about their skill level, and they have to be able to be refined in order to get to a top tier performance. It's the same thing with us. If we want to build relationships with people, we have to be able to be vulnerable with them so that we have the confidence to build relationships and grow in that level of intimacy as friends should. And that comes from being honest. And that's actually one of the subtle themes of especially the first book that I wrote in the series, is that none of the kids had experienced that before. They only experience this very cutthroat, you have to fight to survive, and they get sent to a schoolhouse that's safe, that actually has food to, give them, but importantly, is a setting where they can be truthful with each other so that they can grow in cohesion and build a community there, because they never had community before. And so it's something that if we don't take part in society, if we don't volunteer, if we're not actually walking side by side with our neighbors, somebody else will. And what will those sphere of influence lead them to may not be, a very righteous path. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of wolves out there.
Yeah, no, there is. There is.
But many of our listeners are looking for books that reach boys, men, or entire families. Now, I might be jumping ahead on my agenda a little bit, but I did a quick look at, let me try to say this right. Lepidus, Labadius.
Yeah. It's well, shoot. Whenever I hear somebody else say it, I always get tripped up myself. It's shoot. Now I can't even say it.
Oh, this is so much fun. I love this. Anyway, that book you wrote that we can't pronounce. I just skimmed. You have a lot of nice reviews. Some of them are really long, which is why I didn't write them down because they were long.
Yeah.
But one line stood out, and it's, I don't know, I guess it's kind of why I have this podcast.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother long story. But one line from a reviewer said, "The bond between these teenage boys is as real as any I've ever seen."
Yeah.
And to me, that is really telling and speaks volumes for your work because it's authentic.
Yeah.
So I have to think that your books are the kind of books that my listeners, I hope, are looking for. And I don't know what else to say about that. Except I suspect you couldn't have written a book without making that authentic connection.
No, I would have to agree, and I'm thankful, again for the opportunity to have this platform and just everything that you do to try to encourage readers to find books that inspire, individuals, especially the younger generation. As I mentioned earlier, that some of these characters are real life figures in my life, just real kids that I have mentored as a youth pastor, as a coach. And then other characters are just from my experience with being a chaplain. And, you build these relationships with these students and these kids. And just like any parent or any coach or any teacher who truly has a passion for what they do, you can't help but want to cheer these young people on. And you say, no, you can do it. You can overcome. You can do great things. It's just like the Dr. Seuss book, "Oh, the places you will go." That God has this profound purpose and journey for all of our lives. And it truly is my hope to influence the younger generation, especially, to take part in society. And the four main characters, the four young characters are boys that I had very close relationships with, many, many years ago. And to just kind of see, this is your great potential. And I want you all to succeed together, but then also understand your individual worth. And that's one of the major undercurring themes within the Nation Found book series. And right now it's going to be a 3-book series. Is there's so much individual worth with all of us. We're made in the image of God.
Right.
There's a purpose behind that. There's a divine, aspect to it. But that individualism doesn't just stop there. Is that we've been gifted with spiritual things to serve the community and to not just be introverts as much as, I am, but to be part of society and to use these, gifts, talents, and the purpose that God has put in our hearts to build up his church, right? And to be the salt and the light of the earth. And if there was one thing that I truly wanted to do was make the characters believable, but then also have them go through very hard things. And, one character deals with adoption. He's basically a foster kid and he's sent to this school, where he gets adopted by one of the commanders. Another kid deals with self-esteem and just realizing he really is not worth much back home. And now he has a second chance. And each of these kids go through something very, very tragic. And one of my characters is a female. And even she goes through this, dichotomy of being one of the very few girls in a military institute, which, of course is going to be more male driven. But how does she portray a strong character, but not in a feminist or feminazi type of way, where she can encourage some of the young male main characters to kind of live out their purpose. And I think I did it well. But to make these characters believable was a huge goal of mine.
Yeah, the reviews would indicate that you did do it well. So
Thank you.
That's definitely encouraging to any author.
Yeah.
We hope to strike a chord with those that read our books. Scariest scripture in the Bible for me is, didn't we cast out demons?
Yep. Yeah. And I did not know you because you did not do the will of my Father. And that's so key, Mike, is that the little line that Jesus says, you did not do the will of my Father. It shows the submissiveness of Christ and the obedience that Jesus has. But then it should also invoke us to pursue the Father. It's the Father, the Father. I mean, what does David say in his Psalms? My soul longs to be in the courts of my Father. And that is something that's so paramount, because in my story, in my book series, many of the kids don't have fathers. They just don't.
Yeah.
And if they did, they're not very influential. And here at the schoolhouse, they discover, in a sense, what a godly father should be, and what a godly father points, a child to, again, matters of eternity. And I'll share I'm not going to do this verbatim, but I'm going to paraphrase that there is this big event that happens, and one of the unit gets disbanded, and one of the younger boys, his name is Joey, he asks the commander, and he says, I am so nervous about what's going to happen. And the commander kind of looks at him and says, why? You've been training for this, and stating, you as a young character, you believed that you should sacrifice yourself and be kind of forsake your own individuality. And the commander was pointing to, you're probably more ready than you think you are. You need to go out there with confidence, but realize that you don't go out there by yourself. And it shapes it back to this family, this need for community, and yet the importance of understanding your identity as well. And this goes full circle to what we were talking about earlier, but how difficult it is to truly wrap our minds around the spirit and the ultimate truth of adoption within, Christian theology, within godly theology, is that it's so hard to believe that we have a godly Father who is immensely patient, immensely gracious with people who believe in him, let alone people who don't. And it boggles the mind. And what I love about Nathaniel is that it's, Jesus very, when he meets Nathaniel in the New Testament, it says, he turned his face to him, that he saw him, that Nathan was not abandoned. And we have truly, and I would almost say a pandemic now, if you really think about it, of just sheer loneliness. That people are so lonely today, just so lonely. And we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be. And one of the things that I try to share with people is the need for compassion. And compassion literally means to suffer with. And I would say it's the unsung hero of true leadership traits. That a true leader is compassionate. Not weak-minded, no, but compassionate to suffer with people. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that as Christians, we need to be suffering with each other. And I really pray for the Spirit of the Lord to grant me and all of us a spirit of discernment of how we suffer with people, and not necessarily tolerate individual lifestyles or individual behaviors, but how do we suffer with people? And I'll share this story. And again, I'll kind of give you a little snippet. At the end of the first book, which is called, see, I can't even say it. I was about to say it, but I can't say it. I can't. This is so silly. Well, the second book.
I'm sorry, I've messed you up there.
No, it's okay. The second book is called Insidious, and all of our friends, all the cohort of our characters, they kind of split up to go on these separate missions. And Joey goes off with his battle buddy Macy, and the two of them journey along. And they go through one tragedy after another. It's this endless pursuit of accomplishing the mission. And Joey kind of has a moral stumbling with somebody else, another character in the book. And he does great harm to them. And Joey and Macy are kind of at this outpost where his account is brought to light. In a very quick moment, Aldred, who's the commander who sent Joey on this mission, visits the camp. But Joey never sees it. He never talks to him. And yet he races to try to get to him, but he can't reach the commander because there's just too many people. But Aldred turns once again, and he looks right in Joey's direction. And everybody is cheering. Everybody is, giving him applause, and he's waving. But Joey knows that Aldred is looking at him. And the thing that captures Joey is his eyes, because he knows that these were eyes that had compassion, that knew exactly what Joey did, but did not condemn him. And there's this little moment where Joey's able to kind of breathe again, where again he's able to be honest. He's able to be confident in knowing, yeah, I did this wrong, and I'm going to be held accountable to it at one point. But the person that put me on this path did not abandon me, and he knows exactly what I've gone through. And we've got to remember that as Christians, if we have a spirit of condemnation, we completely replace God. And I mean, what is Romans chapter 1 say? The wrath of God is revealed from heaven. It's not revealed from you and I. And if we can just remember that, then perhaps the world would be a little different. But it's as an author, you have favorite scenes. As a parent, you're not supposed to have favorite kids, or at least tell the kids who your favorites are. But as an author, you kind of have, favorite moments. Yeah. And that one little moment where Aldred turns again, and they make eye contact, and Joey knows he's not been abandoned. And so, I truly hope to leave readers with a sense of hope, with courageous hearts, and the ability to influence others. Because, Mike, I tell you, something I've been teaching kids and the soldiers for years now is the easiest thing to do in life is to make an impact. It's either going to be a positive one or a negative one. Yeah. But it's going to be one. Yeah. And we should be mindful of what impact we want.
Yeah. I don't think people understand what they really are saying when they say, I have done things that God really could never forgive me for.
Yeah.
What they're saying is, I am more powerful than God.
That's right.
I can do something that he says, well, there he goes. He's bigger than I am. He's done this awful thing, and I
Yeah.
can never accept him. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
There's
It's so
nothing.
prideful. It's so prideful.
It is, but we don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this other character in my book, and I don't want to steal too much of your time or all your questions, but
time is not a problem.
his name
you don't want to give away. You don't want to give away all the good stuff in your book.
No,
or
I
people
don't.
say, well, I
don't
need to buy his book because I just saw the podcast.
Oh man, don't do it. Don't do it.
No.
But there's a character named Bosco.
Oh.
And he allows something bad to happen. And so because of his knowledge but lack of willingness to intervene, he has a tremendous amount of guilt and shame. And he kind of converts to this monster-like figure. But the very end of the whole trilogy, and again, the third book should be coming out this summer, comes to a point where Bosco has a choice. He either accepts the fact that he's been forgiven by those who were harmed, or he rejects the very notion of forgiveness and has to earn his redemption, if you will. I'm not going to spoil, of which choice he has, but that's such like many of us. Again, the comment that you shared about, I've done some things that would make me, catch on fire if I ever step, in a church. Like, it's just a prideful thing. It's just a prideful thing.
Yeah, it is very. That's a good line. Do you feel like as you're writing that God has? I don't necessarily want to use the word taught, but that's what's on my teleprompter here. As if anyone thought I had all this stuff in my head. I'm looking at my teleprompter. It says, what's the hardest lesson God has taught you through your writing life?
Gosh, I would say I think the first lesson is it's not about the author at all. And that, for me to really accept that was hard, because there's times where you want to paint a picture and you want the readers to take away perhaps not a moral lesson, but just an emotional feeling, a connection, right? And if you force it, you actually remove the reader because you're telling them exactly how to think and what to see and everything. Yeah. But to allow space to be clear enough, but not too clear, so that they can imagine and feel and get that connection and make those bonds with the characters and cheer for them or cheer for their demise. But I think that was the hardest thing for me to learn, is how do I set up, whether it's dialogue or some sort of scenery, where it allows the reader to be present, not just the author. I think that would be the hardest lesson.
Yeah.
And I was talking with a senior non-commissioned officer a few days ago about just perception, and about perception is the reality. And I said, no, perception is your reality. And he was like, well, what does that mean, chap? And I was like, well, just because you perceive something, does that make it true? We had, a 40-minute conversation about that, about the difference between perception and fact, my perception and your perception, and then where's truth, So it's so easy to get caught up and emotionally spun up. And one of the things that I'll leave with everybody here is that passion without discipline is always going to lead to recklessness.
Yeah.
Without the
Yeah.
discipline, passion is worthless. It's just emotional lack of restraint. And you might be passionate about something great, something noble, but without the discipline, it leads to just an emotional endeavor that yield no fruit. Passion with discipline is going to lead to some form of guided success where you will have the very humbly, the humbled opportunity to see some of the fruit of your own labor. And we need to have that restraint. We need to have that self-control, because if you don't have self-control, then you just demand everything then. And it's something worth teaching. Self-control, restraint, patience. That's a fruit of the Spirit for a reason, right? And so if it's a fruit of the Spirit, then we don't know it naturally. And it's something that we have to teach.
It's hard to learn. Along with that, it's almost probably the same thing, only using slightly different words. Is the difference between I feel and I know.
Right.
And so, I feel that a loving God would not send a person to hell.
Yeah.
I know that God does not send people to hell. It's your choice. Vast difference there in how you perceive everything around you. If you're always operating on feeling instead of knowing, and you can't fool yourself.
That's right.
Do you know this to be the truth? About anything.
Well,
not denying feelings. That's a real thing. But as you say, you have to have some discipline with it. Your feelings can be passion. With no discipline, you don't evaluate them.
Absolutely.
Socrates supposedly said an unexamined life is not worth living.
No, he did say that, I'm
careful with that, because someone might commit suicide because their life isn't worth living.
Well, and that's something that, again, the characters in my book kind of discover, that their entire world that they were raised in, that were told about, was not the original intent of the country. And so they had to have this whole awakening of what is true, what is real. Do I align myself with the antagonists, the individuals who want no choice, no freedom of thought? Or do I align myself with the individuals that want me to choose, but that I have to take personal responsibility?
Yeah.
And then where do I fall in that as a kid, as a 13-year-old, as a 14-year-old? And they discover, again, that the original teachings of the culture gave them identity, gave them the purpose, gave them the meaning to be able to serve with each other on, I would say the old school traditional values of teamwork, of loyalty, of selfless service, that quite frankly are not harped on as much as it should today. And again, you see the bond of the characters forming because of the hardship, but not because they were doing something hard. They were growing through the hardship. And that's I think is a difference between the characters in my book who align themselves with trying to save and redeem the nation, is that they understood that hope is strength for today. Hope is strength for tomorrow. That there's this end thing, there's this future finish line that I manage now, but it's for tomorrow. I'm going for tomorrow. We're building something for tomorrow, whether I'm 12 or I'm an adult. It doesn't matter. And again, it's that idea of restraint and self-control, that I'm going to make choices that help me live with hope to get me through the trials. And again, if we want to bring in the New Testament, look at what Paul says in the book of Romans. Hope is a of our character. You know, in Romans, now I can't remember whether it's chapter 5 or chapter 6, but it says, this hope does not disappoint because it's producing for us a character, and this character produces us endurance, and this endurance produces, you know, this perseverance, and so forth, so forth. What was the pivot to all that? Is understanding that there's a trial that we have to go through, and the hope is a reflection point of where our perspective is. But
yeah. Yeah. You touched on this, I think, but if you could go back and talk to young Matthew, what advice would you give yourself?
I honestly would say just keep rowing. Just keep rowing. The shore will actually come. And don't, you know, and people are kind of surprised when I share this with them. I have very few regrets, and I think regrets can be very powerfully controlling, right? In a negative way.
Yes.
But trust that God has put you where you're meant to be, and just keep rowing. And, you know, to quote a line in my book, when you think that you have served enough, serve a little bit more, and just keep rowing. Eventually the shore will come into view.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good. I've really enjoyed the conversation, Matthew.
So have I.
It's and what I think is so fun about it is we did pull out your books and say, let's talk about this book.
Yeah.
You've shared with us your writing, your life. And in that, we've discussed your books in a kind of in an indirect way. But I like how this is all played out. Because I do want people to know what your books are, though. Would you just briefly give the title? Because I'll put a, I know we're going to try it again. I'll put the cover when I edit the cover of your books up so people can see them.
So book one, so the series is called A Nation Found, and book one is called Lepidus. There it is.
Thank you. All right.
And that is actually Latin for stone, and there's a reason. It foreshadows a pretty paramount aspect of the book. But book one is, I can't even say it anymore. What's wrong with me?
Lepidus.
Lepidus. Yeah, book one is called Lepidus. Book two is, but it's not spelled with an O, and that's intentional. And then book three again comes out this summer, and I had for it. I might just call it part 3 just to be original. but thank you very much for having me on.
Very, very good. Oh, I've really enjoyed it. My camera blocks my timer, but I have been close to an hour.
It's a little bit more than that. My wife keeps looking at me like, when is this over?
Yeah. Them to keep us straight.
Yes.
No, I think that's great. Can I pray?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Our Heavenly Father, we're just so blessed. Put us where you put us, that you have given us tasks to do. We have assignments, and we assignment until Jesus comes, and we know you're coming, or until you call us home. We just praise you for adopting us into the family, for paying the price for our sins, for the gift that you offered from the cross. I ask that you spread your blessings and your grace generously over Matthew and his family. We know that his books are going to reach people that can get a blessing just from reading it. It's just block in the church, the building where we invite you in. And you're in our hearts. We want to keep that place as clean and fresh for you as possible. So one way we do that is with Christian fiction. And we ask that just help us promote those stories that would help people. Again, we thank you for Matthew and his family. We ask you to continue with us as we carry on. We ask all these things in thy name, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I really have enjoyed this. Has been a good. I knew it was going to be a good interview, and so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anytime, Mike, and thank you again for everything that you do, for having me on today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. And I'm going to push this button that says stop. Matthew, thank you for your service, for your honesty, and for both your calling and your writing. This conversation reminds us why Christian fiction matters, not because it avoids harm, because it faces them with truth, restraint, compassion, and hope. Whether we talked about fatherhood, adoption, community, or moral courage, one theme kept returning. Stories shape hearts long history. To our listeners, if you're looking for stories that respect your intelligence and challenge your character, the author you should be paying attention to. As always, thank you for being here. This podcast grows stronger when you comment, when you share, and when you join the conversation with one another. Until next time, keep thinking, and keep forging stories that matter. You've been watching the Wordsmith Forge Christian Fiction Podcast, and I'm Mike Baines. Out.